Times, Page, Gutierrez, and Blackistone. Today, the face you make when you strike out to a third baseman. The face you make when you watermelon challenged.
Hey.
Let's go around the horn.
Comfortable with the lemon challenge.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reali.
Today in the NFL, a deadline for players to report to camp. For La Rams, no Aaron Donald. Team not expecting him to sign anytime soon. Mina Kimes, this is not a surprise the way the negotiations are going. But is it a problem for the Rams? And is it a problem for Donald?
It's a huge problem. Aaron Donald isn't just the best player in the Rams. He's the best defensive player in the NFL. People will say, well, they upgraded the roster, they bolstered the secondary, they added a lot of pieces, but we don't know how those pieces fit together. And they still don't have an elite outside pass rush. They need Donald to get to the quarterback. They also need him as a leader and a calming force in that locker room because a lot of those pieces they added, Talib, Sue, Marcus Peters, they're not exactly calming forces. Look, this team is too good to be playing around like this. It's crazy to me that it's taken this long. They need to get a deal done. They need him to play.
And it sounds like you think Aaron Donald has all hand here. Woody Page, how about you?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Here's a team that's on the cusp of going to the Super Bowl. After what we saw out of it last year and the additions they've made this year, and Tony, I've got one for you. 52 players who are on other Crocky teams make more money than Aaron Donald. Can you actually believe that? I mean, they got players on the Denver Nuggets that are making $29 million, and you're not paying the best player on all of the teams that you own. Forgive me, that is a terrible, terrible mistake, and I know that Wade Phillips is sitting here going, I need this guy. It's going to be a distraction. It's going to be a bother. We saw what happened last year, that it took until the second week of the season before he could play. They need to get this done. They've already done a wide receiver and a running back, and he's better than either one of them.
All right. Good information from Woody Page, though. I love when you say it straight to my eyes. Look me in the eye when you're talking to me, Woody Page. How about you, Israel Gutierrez?
It does seem pretty inexplicable when you consider everything that, Mina and Woody said, and just the idea that this is such an upcoming group that we wouldn't be surprised if they made the Super Bowl. We wouldn't be shocked if they won a Super Bowl as deep and as talented as they are. The only possible reason I could see as them sort of gambling on here is, and this is something that we've talked about with the new rules and whatnot, is defense won't be as valuable next year. Won't be, with the offense and the defensive helmet rules and everything else. Louis Riddick tweeted after the Hall of Fame game that, again, he said in 2018 we'll see more offense than we've ever seen before. So I do think that's the only possible gamble here, but really
hypothesis there. Because I'm not willing to call it a theory yet, and certainly not scientific law on your behalf, Israel Gutierrez. But the idea that defense, legislated out of the game, wouldn't it behoove you to have the best defender in the NFL on your roster then, and signed, Israel? You can answer that.
I suppose you do have other pieces like Sue and and everybody in the secondary there. So maybe it's just one of those situations where you've got a 27-year-old. Maybe people think he's a little younger than he is. Maybe they don't want to commit that much money because the length of his career might not last that long. I don't know. It's just like you say, a hypothesis. So
if you say I don't know, I'm going to go with I don't know. We'll move on. Kevin Blackistone, how about you?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me either. And you know what? That great defensive backfield needs a great defensive rush, someone to pressure the passer to make them as good as they can be, and vice versa. And you would think that they would want to sign this guy. I mean, what more can Donald do for this team? He has gone beyond expectations. He has been not only the best player in the league, but the best player, and he didn't even play the entire season last year because he sat out coming into this season. So here he is again, just wanting to get what is his due. And I got to think that if your other players around the league, even if your players in that locker room, this kind of sows some bad feelings among everybody.
Okay. But every panelist on this show right now says Aaron Donald's got the hand in this negotiation. That's what I'm hearing from you guys. And since we know last year he sat out the first week of the season, you would all agree that's where this is headed unless the Rams do something. Mina Kimes, is he missing week 1, week 2, week 3? What are we looking at here?
He might. You know, the Rams have some leverage in that if he doesn't play, he's a restricted free agent next year instead of an unrestricted one, right? But the thing is, Aaron Donald is so good that another team will pay him, even if he's restricted, and the Rams will have to match him because unlike a lot of players, other teams around the NFL would be willing to give up picks and give them, pay a Godfather deal to Aaron Donald.
But if he's adamant that he's not going to play under this contract and then restricted or unrestricted really doesn't matter. He's just playing going forward, as in his new contract will be a new contract in his next one. Go ahead, Woody Page. Will he be playing week 1, week 2, week 3?
I don't think so. I believe he's going to sit out and get his $20 million. And if I'm him, I'm not waiting on Mac. I'm talking to them about Von Miller, who makes $20 million a year, and he had a better year than Von Miller, and he's basically a better player in the interior line than Miller is outside.
Mm-hmm. Israel, when's he coming back? Pick of the week.
I don't think he comes back until the Rams absolutely need him. I think they'll play that leverage game and say, hey, if we're 3-0, why do we need to go ahead and cave on Aaron Donald?
It'll be like when Emmitt Smith didn't come back to the Cowboys until they realized what they were missing.
That was, 25, 30 years ago, and they started 0-2, right? And
Yep.
then he went out and had an amazing year, and they won the Super Bowl. We'll move on. Odell Beckham, no deal with the Giants. Justina Anderson, ESPN, latest Giants offer around $16 million a year, which is Sammy Watkins money, about 5th or 6th highest in the NFL. Ian Rappaport, NFL Network. Good faith negotiations and a deal would make him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. So we're hearing two different things from camp here. Woody, can Beckham feel good about the faith in these negotiations and should the Giants?
No, it should have gotten done last week when they got together. And, I mean, that's as close as you can get, it would be presumed. So they're not going to trade him, though. People are talking about the Cleveland Browns trying to go out and, Jarvis saying, oh, bring him here.
Yeah,
well,
I think
sure,
Jarvis Landry was talking about that. Yeah.
Sure. Cleveland, if you can get him, give up Jarvis and give up 2 first-round draft choices and you could get him. But really, the Giants this is the last chance for Eli, really. Either this is going to be the end for him, they have bulked up on their offensive side, and really, just go ahead. I'm going to take the player side again. He has proven that he's one of the top 3 quality wide receivers in the entire National Football League. Go ahead and pay him that kind of money. You set the market, so make him part of that top end of the market. I don't know what they're thinking right now.
Israel Gutierrez?
They're not.
It would seem like you'd want him back. It seemed like maybe there are also other factors here at play, not just his talent on the field. And if the Giants are thinking as much and wondering, hey, will he be an injury problem? Will he just be a problem off the field continually? I understand all that if that's sort of working its way into the negotiations. But really, I think it's more of what they're going to see this year. Will a combination of Saquon Barkley, and Beckham and Manning create this team that could win its division that, hey, maybe we do have a future with pretty decent quarterback play and then the best receiver in the game, arguably, and one of the better running backs coming up. So I think it's sort of a wait-and-see approach, not necessarily give everything to Odell, and then all of a sudden you've got a terrible team with one superstar receiver.
Well, you can always stick a tag on him and keep him around, and that might be the better option here. But I think if you're the Giants, you definitely want to keep him there for the reasons you just laid out. I mean, you just brought in Barkley, thought to be the best running back in a few years. You're hoping that'll help out Eli, and what better thing to help out Eli than to have a healthy Odell Beckham Jr. to throw to? So you want to keep that group together. If it's true that, as you just said in the last block, that offense is this much more critical in the NFL right now, you put the money in the offensive player in this particular case, and you keep OBJ around. OBJ.
Yeah, they got to pay him. He's the most talented player on that roster, and it's not particularly close. Eli Manning needs him like a fish needs water. Without OBJ, his passer rating drops from 91 to 75 in the 12 games he didn't play. Last season, they could not score more than 14 points on average. Saquon Barkley is terrific, but if Odell's not on that field, he is going to face so many stacked boxes. Ask Leonard Fournette what that feels like. I understand the possibility of franchise tagging next year, but there's a reason why with players like this, you don't franchise tag them over and over. It's because the leverage the team has over and will decline every time, and they could find themselves in a Kirk Cousins situation. Right now, they should give him a long-term contract. While they do have that leverage, they should get something done.
Last word, Woody Page.
Barkley's been lining up in training camp on the outside. Can you imagine if you have 2 of those guys on the same side? There's no way that you can double team both of them on that side. So I think that it's not only critical to the Giants, but it's critical to Barkley's progress and his development, that to have him as another player take the pressure off Barkley.
Mina, you said Eli needs Beckham like a fish needs water. Was that going back to the yacht? Was that a reference to Beckham on the yacht? Were you trying to do something there? We'll move on. Let's talk baseball. Matt Davidson was MVP of the Futures game a few years ago. Hit 3 home runs on opening day this season. It's possible the most memorable highlight of his pro career is going to be coming at the pitch and striking out Giancarlo Stanton. He did it last night. Buster Olney, quote, position players' pitching has gotten out of hand, end quote. Major League record already has been set, and Davidson was the 51st appearance by a position player on the mound this season. KB, is that bad for baseball?
No, I don't think it's bad for baseball. I don't think it ruins the game. And let's give this guy credit. He's thrown 3 scoreless innings right now in relief of relief and relief. Yeah. Right? So this is outstanding. And you know what? In the long grind of the baseball season, all these 2,400 plus games that get played, not counting the playoffs. So what if you had this happen a couple times? It's pretty cool to talk about. And it's a throwback to baseball when we all played it and we all played all the positions on the field. Why not have that?
So you said a couple times. This is 51. Mina Kimes, is this bad for baseball?
I don't think it's bad for baseball because it happens so infrequently. I do think it's bad for labor because, as Buster pointed out in his story, the reason this is happening is that starting pitchers are pitching less and less, so relievers are pitching more and more, so managers are having to scramble for guys who can eat up innings in meaningless games. As a result, wages of those starting pitchers have stagnated. And really what we're looking at, while these position players are excited to pitch, they're doing unpaid labor when you think about it, right? So this could be a problem, I think, for the union going forward.
Israel Gutierrez.
Well, listen, I'm just going to talk about Matt Davidson for a second because there is no shame in that getting struck out by that man. There's only been 2 American League players in history to have 3 pitching appearances and 15 home runs in a season. That's Davidson, and that's Babe Ruth. So this guy might be Shohei Ohtani before Shohei Ohtani,
Is that
and
true?
we didn't even know it here. Yeah.
Ohtani's not there right now? Yeah, he's
only got 11.
Okay,
so
good.
I do think there's a novelty there to having these players pitch, and I think it's interesting. Even Jose Reyes, when he did it in an embarrassing game for the Mets against the Nationals the other day, said he'd always wanted to do it. It's just when you happen to get on the mound that it gets a little nerve-wracking and embarrassing. So I don't know if it's sort of a blip on the screen or if it's a long-term problem here. I think the labor situation is problematic, but sorry about that, Tony. But I do think if you just find a way to get starting pitchers to pitch more, which we always say they've been babied, right? We always talk about that stuff. Well, maybe they just need to go longer.
Woody Page, last word after the
Horn already? It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what else I could say about it. Every team now is carrying like 13 pitchers. I mean, you can't have a slop guy that comes in and pitches 5 or 6. That's the way it's always been done before. And if that's not the solution, let's do this. Let's have a mercy rule in baseball. When you're behind by 10 runs, cut off the game. If you don't like that, then let the bullpen. Let the bullpen pitcher, the batting practice pitcher, the bullpen catcher, make them auxiliary players so they can come into a game.
The bullpen catcher now is part of the okay. I mean, or you could just have a 26-man roster, right? Wouldn't that be something you can collectively bargain for, an extra roster position?
Or how about 28, 30? Who cares?
I don't think we're getting to the bottom of this right now. Taking a break, buy or sell next. Stick around.
Around the Horn is brought to you by E-Trade, the original place to invest online.
I'm a squeaky toy, and I've got one job, getting chomped on by this little ankle sniffer. So pardon me for feeling inept compared to Geico, who does so much more. Like while I'm getting slobbered on, Geico is creating cool technology like their mobile app, which lets people pay their bills or file a claim. Plus, Geico is the fastest growing auto insurer for the last 10 years. Is it too much for me to ask for one more feature? Fast and friendly claim service like Geico, maybe? Oh, great. I'm getting buried again.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Buy or sell.
The rally for Urban Meyer just outside Ohio Stadium yesterday. 200 people. Mina Kimes, what are you doing with that information and those visuals?
It is troubling. It was a small rally, but I think it was indicative of a conversation we're seeing happen online with a lot of fans, not all of the fans, but some of them. The people who organized the rally said this isn't about domestic violence. This isn't about Zach Smith. It's about defending our coach, Urban Meyer. But that's the problem. The problem is that they are putting Urban Meyer first here, that they aren't asking why did he mislead the public about what he knew in 2015? Why did he choose to keep on a coach who had been accused of domestic violence multiple times for several years? Look, there are a number of reasons why victims don't come forward. First and foremost, fear of retaliation from their partners, but they are also afraid that people don't care about them, that they aren't being prioritized by others, and I think this rally is indicative of those priorities.
Very well said, Mina. Woody Page?
Yeah, I support what Mina says, but in terms of looking at the numbers, when you draw 100,000 to football games, and I know that school isn't in session yet, but this whole organization was started by a guy in South Carolina named Tennessee that didn't go to Ohio State. Why not wait until the investigation is complete? It's supposedly only going to take 2 weeks. Then, if they wanted to support him, they could.
Israel Gutierrez?
Yeah, this is exactly what you expected it to look like. Now, there could have been more people if school was in session, so it would have been a little bit larger. I am slightly encouraged that it was a small number of people. But yeah, as Mina said, how could this not be about domestic violence when the entire Urban Meyer story is about him basically protecting somebody accused of domestic violence? It is exactly what it's supposed to be. And I'm not that discouraged by this rally, but I'm not surprised it happened either.
Kevin Blackistone.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the fact that the glass was almost all full in terms of the people who didn't show up, who represent, 100,000 people who show up at Ohio State football games in Columbus, one of the largest alumni bases in the entire country. The fact that they weren't there, that you can almost count the people that were there, I think that's a good sign. And maybe,
I do wonder about that, Kevin. You're a professor of
towards
journalism. My own personal dilemma. Do we even cover that then? If it's only 200 people, by covering it, are we overstating what it in fact was?
I think you cover it, but you put it in that context. If it's 200 people out of 400 people, then that's a huge problem. If it's 200 people out of 110,000 people, then I think I can be a little bit more comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on. Buy or sell 2, Cleveland Browns. Real live hard knocks tonight. Hugh Jackson says expect a lot out of Baker Mayfield in Thursday's preseason game. Hugh appears to have a new approach for quarterbacks after throwing Cody Kessler and Deshaun Kaiser into maybe the Wolves in their rookie years. Quote, that didn't do anybody any good, so why take a guy who we know is going to be our future and put him in that situation? End quote. Woody, buy or sell? Jackson's approach to Mayfield here.
I realize he's been burned the last couple of years, but he also was with the Cincinnati Bengals, who started Andy Dalton as a rookie, and he got him to the playoffs. He was with Flacco in Baltimore, and he got him to the postseason the first year. I don't think you can make a blanket statement like that because over the last, 10 years, we've seen 27 quarterbacks who were drafted in the first round that actually start the first year and do pretty well.
Israel?
Yeah, I'm selling that there's any sort of template to what you do in these situations. You can go the Aaron Rodgers route. You can go, the Kaiser route or anybody else that you have to throw out there who's a first-round pick or, a rookie quarterback. I think what you do is when you have a starter that is capable, like Tyrod Taylor, you play him until Baker Mayfield is clearly the better player. If he's not that yet, you've got a quality player right there.
KB?
Yeah, it's just the first preseason game. Let's see how this all plays out over the next month. But, yeah, I think this is fine. Tyrod Taylor's 28 years old. A lot of people think he got the short end of the stick when he was in Buffalo, that he played fairly well up there for a short period of time. So why not ride that and then develop the future quarterback?
And that takes us to Mina Kimes.
I'm buying approach, but not the reason. It makes sense to start Tyrod Taylor. He's the best quarterback they've had in a while, which speaks more to the quarterbacks and less to Tyrod Taylor. However, I think Hugh is doing this because he was so badly burnt by how badly he handled the Deshaun Kaiser situation last season, starting, benching. So I only hope that whenever they decide to put in Baker Mayfield, they keep him in there and they commit, unlike the last season.
That's true from Cleveland's perspective and also from Tyrod Taylor's perspective, because that's what he just had in Buffalo. We'll move on. Buy or sell 3. WNBA saying forfeit to the Las Vegas Aces. League ruling the team chose not to play Friday. Team and its players were making this a dispute about players' rights, about the charter flights, about the 25 hours of travel and delay and injury risk in playing so soon after making it to D.C. League essentially saying you made it to D.C., you should have played the game. KB, buy or sell the decision?
No, I got to sell it. That's not a ruling. That's a punitive action taken against the Aces because it drops them 2 games behind the last playoff spot behind Dallas. They should have found another way to work this out or not count the game. Women have been complaining about accommodations, traveling schedules, all those sorts of things for quite some time.
So you say too punitive. How about you, Mina?
I'm selling the way they handled this. The fact that they waited several days to issue a statement and then only a single sentence, not explaining how complicated this is, and more importantly, not explaining how they're going to handle players' health concerns going forward.
Woody Page?
I'm selling the league. I'm selling to both teams. I'm selling the stance that was taken here. These were unusual circumstances. Charter a plane in Las Vegas and fly there and play the game. And back in 70, when I was covering the ABA, they had flights like that all the time. They played the game, but it was always sloppy and terrible to watch.
Per the CBA, charters, that's something that the WNBA doesn't have. Everybody flies commercial, though they did waive that, but the Aces said it was too late when they waived it. Israel Gutierrez, I know this is way after the one, but please go ahead.
That's all right. There's only so many things that everyday people can relate to with pro athletes. This is one of them. When you talk about commercial airlines, people have been through that before and not even go to a meeting that same day, much less play a basketball game. I'm totally with the Aces here on that.
You are? Okay. All right. So nobody's with you play to play the game side of this, which is where the WNBA
under those circumstances.
Meet a Kimes Page showdown. Gutierrez, Blackistone. Taking a break right here. Back on the other side. Meet the Kimes, Woody Page. Good luck in showdown. Only time for one. Perfect game for the Tampa Tarpons last night. Going into extra innings. The runner starts the inning at second base rule was in it. And then we had an error and a ground out. So they lost the perfect game, and they lost the game while still having a no-hitter. Are you still calling that a perfect game, Mina Kimes?
Yes, in my personal record book, this was a perfect game. And do you know why it was perfect? Because everyone got to go home early. I am absolutely in favor of this rule.
Mina,
if you don't want to blow it, don't commit the error.
It is not an immaculate game when you have an error and you have a fielder's choice and you have people bobbling the ball mentally and physically. Ask Harvey Haddix. He had a perfect game going into extra innings and lost it. This makes no sense whatsoever. They shouldn't even have this as a solution.
Once again, Woody, it appears like you're looking off camera while you're talking. You started the show like this. I want to go back to something you said. And if you're watching on DVR, rewind it. Did you say immaculate game? A play on the tarpon, which is a type of fish, which you should not Google right now because it is an ugly fish. Woody Page, I think you did, and I think I'm giving you the FaceTime for it.
Whoa. I've seen a lot in baseball. We just saw an example of that, but in the Independent Baseball Association, Brad Metzger was called out on a third strike, and he argued with the umpire, and he got kicked out, ejected. Well, that's not unusual, but he left the field. He came back with a garbage can, and he put it next to the umpire, and he said, "Go to your home." And that's how he ended the game. You've never seen that happen in any kind of minor league or major league game.
Mina Kimes is getting ready to get a garbage can after the rule. You don't agree with my fish puns there? All right, I was going with it just for the hell of it. We'll take a break. I'm a dad of 2 kids. I have dad jokes. Yes, that's what happens. We'll see you tomorrow.
Debate.